Have you ever seen real fear? Now, I'm not talking just about like a phobia, like you're afraid of spiders or you're afraid of the dark, or like me, I'm afraid of heights. Just thinking about something that's high up just makes my stomach sick. I'm not talking about that kind of fear. I want you to think about, have you ever seen real fear? A couple of years ago, me and my brother and our kids, we were out fishing. And most people, when they think about fishing, they think about warm, sunny days and snacks and cold drinks. But we decided to go out. We had cabin fever, and so we went out fishing in March, and it was so cold. I remember it being in the 30s, and the ice had just come off the water. And we were fishing and having a good time, and I distinctly remember hearing this sound while we were fishing, as if a rock fell out of our boat into the water. But it wasn't a rock. It was my brother's son. And I'll never forget what happened in that moment, because it was a really scary moment. It was really cold outside. The current was raging, and you would expect somebody falling overboard to just sort of pop up that was wearing a life jacket, but that's not what happened. He dove, the current swept him under, and he dove down head first. And I remember my brother grabbing him out of the water, and we had to take off all of his wet clothes, and we wrapped him up in some warm clothes, and we took him back, and he was so cold. And we still remember this story as something that was kind of funny now looking back at it. But there's something that I remember about that story that maybe other people didn't really see, or the other people that were in the boat. And that was the look on my nephew's face when my brother pulled him back into the boat. And it was a look of real fear. You see, the thing about fear is that we all carry it around. We all have it. It's innate within us as part of our fallen nature. We fear things that are minor, and then we fear things major. There's something that's at war within us that wants us to fear things that we can't see and things that we can't know. And this common fear is woven within us to be afraid of what happens to us when we die, or we're afraid of this idea of death. When we're young, we think that we have all the time in the world. We see ourselves as invincible. Like my nephew, he was just out having a good time, and next thing he knew, he was being swept away by this icy water. And he was safe, but the look in his eyes said that there was something within all of humanity that makes us afraid. And the interesting thing about fear is fear doesn't bring humanity to its best. It brings out the worst of humanity. It brings out the worst of us as individuals. It brings out the worst of us as a collective group of people. But yet so many of us live in this fear, not just fear of what might happen to us, but fear of what's on the other side of eternity. And today is a day that we remember what Jesus did for us. And the beauty of what Jesus did for us all of that time ago was that he came to take away that fear of what happens on the other side of eternity. But for so many of us, it's not even just about knowing that we need God. It's not even so much knowing that we've done things wrong. It's fearing that God would accept us. There's actually a story in the Bible, and the story involves Jesus and some of his followers, and some of his followers were out on a boat. And the miracle of this story is that Jesus is out there on the water too, but he's not in a boat. He's walking on the water. And one of his followers named Peter calls out to Jesus, and he's like, "Hey, Lord, if that's you, invite me to come walk on the water with you." But And so he does. And he says, all right, Peter, come and join me. And so Peter takes a step out of the boat and he starts walking on the water. And just a moment later, we don't know how much time had passed, but it said that Peter began to see the winds and the waves around him. And so as soon as he started seeing those things, he started to sink. And Jesus was there, and it said that Jesus went down and he pulled him up out of the water and he went back into the boat. And I'm always enamored by this story because it's this moment for Peter that is a great victory, but it's also a time of great defeat. And for Peter, he continued throughout his life, especially when following Jesus, to have a lot of those same moments, these good moments with Jesus, and then these bad moments. And I wonder how often in our lives we let our past failures cripple our future promises. There's a scripture in the Bible that says this. It says that perfect love casts out all fear. And regardless of the fear that's being held within our hearts tonight, maybe we're looking at our circumstances, maybe we're looking at our lives, we're looking at our families, and everything that we begin to see around us looks like wind and looks like waves. It's so easy for us to get our mind on things that would let us sink. And maybe you're watching this tonight and you're like, yeah, I'm already sunk. But there's good news, because Jesus is the one that brings us up. Jesus is the one who restores our faith. Jesus is the one who takes away our fear. See, when Jesus died for us, it wasn't just an act of love for one person. It was an act of love for all of humanity. And when we fall in line and understand that we are a part of that love, that we are a part of that expression of love that Jesus did on the cross, then we can understand that the fear of the unknown, the fear of what lays beyond eternity, can be taken away by Jesus, not just in one moment for us, but that it was already taken away for us for our future. I want to pray for you tonight. And it's going to be my prayer as we've thought and we've looked at this time that we celebrate and we remember what Jesus did for us. We remember that regardless of the fear that faces our life tonight, that perfect love can cast out all of that fear. So I want to pray, not just here, but I want to pray with you in your homes. And I hope that you'll get your family together. I hope that you'll gather around the TV or whatever you're doing tonight, and you'll engage with this idea that God has a plan, that God has a promise, and that the darkest day that was Good Friday wasn't the end of human history. It wasn't the end of God's story, but it was just the beginning. Maybe you feel like you've fallen in, but Jesus is there to pick you up. God, I pray for each and every person that's watching this tonight. God, as we all can struggle with the idea of fear of the unknown, fear of the future, fear of illness or pain or suffering, God, that you're there to destroy that fear, to cast it out, and to replace it with a hope, to replace it with a future that has been paid for through your death on the cross, your resurrection from the dead. I thank you that we as your people can remember that, can celebrate that, and can unite with the greatest act of love that humanity has ever seen. Amen.
You will not relent, my God. Right beside me you have always been. When in pride I've pushed away, it's your mercy that has pulled me in. You won't walk away, won't give me up. I know your grace has forgiven much. You call me yours, how can it be in or again? Here remembering, you won't give me up. I will not refuse you, God. Right beside you's where I wanna be. Trust you with my heart and soul. Trusting you with everything. You won't walk away, won't give me up. I know your grace has forgiven much. You call me yours, how can it be in or again? Here remembering, you won't give me up. Jesus, you won't give me up. How vast is the grace you gave. I'm free and forgiven. Your love is the safest place, the peace I will live in. Now I have eternity, and I'll sing of your truth, and a hope that will never fail, a love that is so true. Oh, grace upon grace again, forever found in you. Oh, for my Jesus, you'll never fail. My Jesus, I'm holding on to you. To you. I'm holding on to you. To you.
We want to thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you and your family for all of your support as we've continued through this time. And I want to encourage you tonight and tomorrow and Sunday to take some time with your family and really talk about and let your kids ask questions or discuss some of the ideas that of things that happened during this time that we're celebrating. Jesus' death, his resurrection. what that means for us. If you're new to the idea of faith and knowing who Jesus is, this is a great time for you to consider what it would be like to follow Jesus and to give your life to him. And we hope that you'll reach out to us if that's you, whether it be calling us or emailing us or whatever that would be. But I want to encourage you to take the step of engaging with God this weekend. I hope that you're ready for an amazing celebration on Sunday morning as we gather together to celebrate Jesus' resurrection together. And I'm so glad that you joined us tonight, and I hope you have a great night. God bless.